I've noticed this in my own life too. Whenever you're interacting with whether it's an interviewer or a girl you'd like to go out with, as soon as your brain starts getting to the place of, if I say this, then they'll think this, that's when you know that you're operating from a place of deprivation and scarcity. Because you're trying to craft what you say and do to this expectation, which may or may not be correct, but either way, it's still you trying to put it on an act, because deep down you think, what I really am is not good enough. So I've got to put on this performance so they'll think that I'm good enough for a while, at least, so that I get the job, so that I get the date, so that I get the relationship. Welcome back to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. In this week's episode, Dan and I will continue our discussion of Dating Essentials for Men by Dr. Robert Glover. Topics covered include the abundance mindset versus scarcity thinking, empathy, stress, and leadership, authenticity in relationships and social dynamics, lessons from past experiences, the role of therapy, coaching, and support systems, success, fame, and the trade-offs of wealth, critiques of self-help language and, quote, miracle thinking, and other topics. Please check out our website, mindfullymasculine.com, for any news worth reporting, as well as audio episodes and full video episodes. Thanks and enjoy.
Morning, Charles. How you doing?
I'm well, Dan. Thank you very much. This is Chapter 4, Version 2. We recorded this several weeks ago, and it was to be released. We're recording this on Thursday, March 13th. We were supposed to release it on Monday the 10th. But there was an audio problem that I could not fix with my various AI audio processing tools.
Welcome.
Yeah, after I was trying for a while, I was like,
I fail.
I'm giving up. It's my fault for not doing a test before we started recording.
Yeah, I like that answer better.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, the more things that are my fault, means the more control of the universe I have. So everything's my fault, which puts me in control of everything.
How's that working out for you?
It's great. Personal relationships really, really, it's the best. Yeah, everything's my fault. Everything that goes wrong is my fault. Everything that goes right is just good luck. And as a result, I am to blame for everything bad that happens. Yeah,
this one's about abundance.
It's quite a way, exactly, quite a way to live. Yes, so we are, the last episode that our listeners would have heard from us would have been Chapter 3. I don't remember what it was titled, but let's see if I have it open actually. Chapter 3 was Eliminate Your Fear of Rejection Forever. So that's the last episode that we successfully edited and released. This one is Discover the Secrets of Abundance That Naturally Attract Women. And there was an interesting thing I saw this week that I posted to my personal Instagram, which was a quote, it was something Elon Musk said in the last week about how empathy is like the worst thing and the fall of Western civilization, and the idea that empathy is a bad thing. And the person that was posting it responded to it with a quote from Margaret Mead. And that's a name I recognize, but I don't know what she's famous for.
Yeah,
so
I recognize that too.
Margaret Mead was an American cultural anthropologist, author, and speaker. And what she said was the easiest way to tell when we essentially made the change from a bunch of random hominid hunter-gatherers to a civilization, when you look back in the archaeological record, it's the first time that you encounter a mended femur bone. Because that is the time that, as a species, we decided it's worth me giving up on some of my time, effort, and my own survivability to nurse this other person back to health so that we could all move forward together. And that really does fly in the face of empathy being a problem. I would say, and I'm on her side, empathy is a civilization builder, not a civilization crutcher. Yeah. But the problem is when you're living a life where you essentially feel like your own personal survival is precarious, where you could be killed at any moment, you could die at any moment, you could be ostracized by your tribe at any moment, then how could you take time to empathize for what other people are going through? You're too worried about, I'm in danger, I have to stay alive, and empathy is a luxury you can't afford. So I thought, how sad for literally the richest and arguably most powerful man on the planet to say empathy empathy is too dangerous for me. I can't take time to empathize for other people.
Yeah.
Just
That's the thing too, is just, I think there's shades of empathy, right? And there, you can take it to an extreme, right?
Yeah.
Anything else, I think. And
maybe. What does that look like?
because in his position, it's going to look different than somebody who has no resources or a lot less resources. So maybe his definition of empathy, or maybe some of the asks he's been asking, and maybe that's what triggered. I don't know, but the thing is,
he's a smart guy, and it's possible he doesn't know what the word empathy means. But what
right?
That's
the thing is, like, for him, maybe he's defining empathy about all the big asks he's probably getting all the time for things. I don't know.
What, you think he's conflating empathy and charity?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, but
Maybe. Look, who knows? But thankfully, Elon doesn't run my life at this point just yet.
But I think I took him at face value, which is to say, to take time to put myself in somebody else's shoes to understand what they're experiencing. That's a dangerous thing for us to do. We shouldn't do that.
It makes no sense as a leader. He runs a couple of companies, right? How can you be an effective leader if you don't understand the people that you're leading? And to me,
that's a solid question. Another thing I've heard about him recently is that for people that have experienced working for one of his companies, you hear one of two things. Either that was the worst experience of my life, I'm never going to do it again, or working for him was amazing, I'm never going to do it again. There's not a lot of people.
Okay.
Yeah, usually the people that do have an experience with him, it's a profound changing experience, life-changing experience for them. But it's usually one that says either it really affected me in amazingly positive ways, but I don't want to do it again, or it affected me in very negative ways, but I don't want to do it again.
I'm going to challenge that, because how can you run any company if you've got turnover? Most of the people are saying that. I would think most of the people, there'd be high turnover. Is there? I don't know.
I don't know either.
But I was thinking, how can you run a successful company with so much churn? I don't know. So I'm sure there's people out there that are like that. And I'm sure people said that also with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and a lot of these other,
probably,
a lot of people who are used to getting their way every single time.
Yeah, but that's the thing. One of the ways you can offset the harm of high turnover is if you have the companies with the coolest reputations that everybody, right, you pay enough and you draw the highest talent, then it's once somebody gets burnt out and says, I'm done with this, so you got 10 other people that want to be able to add SpaceX or Tesla or whatever to their resume. It just really struck me that I consider a lack of empathy very closely tied to a scarcity or deprivation mindset. And it's, man, if the richest guy in the world can have a scarcity or deprivation mindset, then we're all at risk, right? He literally has more stuff or the potential to acquire more stuff than anybody else, but he's human.
He's a human being.
Yeah.
So that's the thing,
depending on how much metal's in his brain.
It's built into our biology to protect ourselves.
And it's also, a question to ask ourselves too, for people who are driven to achieve at that high level. It's okay, what is it that happened to you that we're all either running away from something or running towards something.
And both of those are stressful situations.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's where we revert back into a scarcity and a non-empathetic type of mindset, is when we're feeling that high level of stress. And when you are running companies at that level, is there any day where you're not feeling stressed about something? I think that's really the toughest thing, is finding that time and being able to find that balance where you are taking your foot off the gas a little bit and being able to relax. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but I think you're fighting your own biology if you are in this fight or flight hormone.
Absolutely.
And now you're asking okay, you need to stop protecting yourself and do something for somebody else. And you really almost need to down all of the feelings you have about yourself and thinking about yourself and what you need and what you want to do in order to, I think, truly be empathetic and to really be a good listener and be there.
Yes. Not only that, he also does what I guess he considers to be bragging about the fact that he's never been to therapy. And so I don't know anybody who has homegrown the tools inside their own brain for being able to deal with high stress, whether that's in personal relationships or in their job. You get those tools from other humans. It's because without those tools, all you're doing is reverting back to, okay, what kept me alive when I was a kid going through trauma or going through not having my needs met? And in just about every case, those tools that worked for you when you were a scared 6-year-old are not going to work for you. They may keep you alive as an adult, but they're not going to keep you happy. They're not going to keep you fulfilled. They're not going to keep you content. And so if you've not gotten those tools in your adulthood, then yeah, you're just going to rely on your old programming. And I don't know, I can't speak to how happy or fulfilled of a guy he is.
Mm.
I can say, just from what I've seen of him and how he relates to people online and how he talks about his relationships and interviews, if you gave me the option tomorrow to wake up with his money and his mindset, and many people won't believe me that I'm being honest when I said I would pass. I would rather stay me with my problems and my blessings than taking on his.
Right. Look, there are going to be, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're going to have problems. They're just going to be different problems and we don't have money. And so that's the question is, do you want to trade your problems for his problems?
Yeah, it's hard for me to think of anybody who I can look at and say, I would rather trade bank account balances with them and trade problems with them, where I would not want to being as rich as him sounds pretty nice, but being as famous as him, definitely not. Being stuck in the daily political controversies that he's involved in. No, I don't want that many people to know my face, know my name, know how I behave in all these different circumstances.
Just have different love languages.
Yeah, we have a lot of different languages. I definitely don't speak Afrikaans or whatever he grew up learning. But yeah, I don't know. It just, I did feel some pity for him when I read his quote about empathy. And I was like, man, somebody else with his circumstances, it would be very believable to hear them say, okay, I got where I am. And now my only job is to work on empathy and make the world a better place by understanding people, caring about people, contributing to people. And it seems like that is the opposite of feeling like empathy is the enemy. And it was like, man, regardless of whatever else you think of the guy, whatever you think of his politics or his wealth or whatever, the way he handles his relationships, this is a guy that's worth feeling bad for, because you don't get to have that much stuff and think that empathy is the enemy without being pretty messed up top.
That's what I question is, in terms of his definition, does he even realize when he's being empathetic or when he's not being? Because it's really inconceivable to me. I just don't understand how you can be so successful and not have or not display empathy, right? And maybe it's just in a way that he's not recognizing.
Let's say that he is an empathetic person and he's just scared of owning the fact that he's an empathetic person, which is a whole other set. Like, I'm going to say this in a public forum to a reporter so that it gets repeated, because I feel like
This is
the people who like and respect me, this is what they need to hear me say. So I'm going to say it. That's almost worse.
Right. That goes back to this whole no more Mr. Nice Guy, right? Dating essentials for men type of thing. It's doing things based on what you think other people are expecting of you, or
right,
exactly, to please other people instead of owning it yourself.
Yeah.
And owning yourself.
And it's part of the black and white thinking that the Glover talks about. I think it might be in chapter 10. If being a stereotypical nice guy is not the way to get girls, then the opposite of that is being an asshole. So I'll be an asshole to get girls. No, the opposite of it is just be an emotionally regulated and strong man who's kind to everyone and doesn't give to get and doesn't act nice to get people to like you. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's a crisis affecting men, and the result is a lot of people acting the way they think they're supposed to act instead of being who they really are.
That's the stereo thing, right? Because in either case, I think the whole black and white you're just talking about, we'll get into chapter 10, but it's, you're either nice to everyone, which is a little bit of an act because you're not addressing your own needs, or if you're an asshole to everybody, that's also an act, right? You're still not really addressing who you are.
Right.
And both ways is easier, putting up this front, pretending to be something that you're not, because you've got now this barrier of between you and the real world. And so you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to really open yourself up, because if somebody
when you get
calls you on something, now it hits because you've no barrier in front of you. You have no act that you're putting on.
Yeah. When you're getting rejected, and everybody who puts on an act does get rejected, you've got this internal, probably unconscious thing that says, okay, it's all right because they were rejecting the act. They weren't rejecting me.
Exactly. That's not exactly what I think.
Exactly.
That's not exactly the
They
way I am.
they were reacting. They were rejecting the version of me that I decided to pretend to
I
be.
think the irony of it is that you get rejected a lot less if you're actually being yourself, I think, because people will recognize that.
And it will affect you less too,
Mm,
which is very counterintuitive. You think, okay,
yeah.
if I'm the real me and people reject me, that'll hurt so bad. It's no, if you're the real you and people reject you, then you're like, okay, good. I found out that person and me, we don't vibe. We're not each other's kind of people. And so I don't need to obsess over them. I don't need to be caught up with the what ifs. I can just say, okay, I was the real me.
Mhm.
Where the opposite is true. It's if you act, you put on that front and you act like somebody you're not, and then it doesn't work out. And I've had this experience myself. It doesn't work out. Then you're constantly thinking, what if I either, what if I chose a different act,
Yeah.
or what if I actually did let them see the real me? Maybe this relationship wouldn't have failed.
Mm.
And then you got to carry that regret around with you, which is also no fun. But yeah, if you can just be like, okay, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to work at making that me the best version of myself that it can be. I'm going to do the work to my mind, my body, my spirit, all that stuff to say, okay, I want to be the best version of Charles that Charles can be. And then somebody's like, okay, I see you, but it's not for me. You're like, okay, if I'm not for you, then you're not for me either. And we can move on.
And I think the part that's really important is to know that's okay.
Right.
You will be okay. The other person will be okay. You can handle it. It's not going to be a problem if that one person you don't get along with. I think it's naive to think that going into the expectation, which a lot of us do, is that everybody is going to like us and everybody should like us.
Yeah, they should for sure.
And that's the thing is, again, that goes back to maybe some control issues. Like we can't control other people. We can't control their upbringing and what they think and what they're bringing to the table as much as we'd like to.
Yeah, it's so bringing this back into the abundance mindset is it's so important to understand that there is a world full of people, maybe not full, but there's a lot of people in the world, certainly enough people in the world that will be into who you are. And if you don't believe that to be true, then yeah, you're always going to be trying to stay one step ahead of other people's expectations of what do I need to be? What do I need to do in this situation to get them to like me? How do I need to act? What performance do I need to put on so that, and that really, I've noticed this in my own life too. Whenever you're interacting with, whether it's an interviewer or a girl you'd like to go out with, as soon as your brain starts getting to the place of, if I say this, then they'll think this. That's when you know that you're operating from a place of deprivation and scarcity, because yeah, you're trying to craft what you say and do to this expectation, which may or may not be correct, but either way, it's still you trying to put it on an act, because deep down you think what I really am is not good enough. So I've got to put on this performance so they'll think that I'm good enough for a while at least, so that I get the job, so that I get the date, so that I get the relationship. And then you will either your performance at some point will falter and they'll be like, wait a second, this isn't who you told me you were. You're not acting like the guy that you acted like before I went out with you or before I hired you for this job or whatever. And then it falls apart.
Yeah.
Or you'll just get tired of acting and you'll get resentful of having to be on stage so often. And then you'll just have these random blowups that also will destroy the job relationship or the personal relationship or whatever.
And I think a lot of the reason we do that is because we put so much weight and stock into that relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that happens when we don't actually practice some of the things that he's talking about here, the appreciation for the people we already have in our lives and that we've had in our lives. A lot of times we take it for granted or forget about all the things that the people in our lives have brought us in terms of happiness and health and mental health and everything else. And so he talks about in the book, he talked about in this chapter specifically, thanking and figuring out what each person in his life has brought him. And he started to appreciate them more. And he felt better about himself as well. And I think if you can develop a practice where you are thinking about not just the things that you have to appreciate, but the people that you have in your life,
Right.
and just one gift that each of them gave you, whether you are in touch with them at this point or not, those gifts then can make you realize, hey, there are a lot of people out there who like me for me, and I don't need to put on this act because now I'm less dependent on this relationship for my own happiness.
Yeah, the
evidence and hope that you can find somebody else if this isn't working out.
and the difficult part of that, which is a level that I have not yet gotten to myself, is the part where you can look at a relationship you had and maybe the only thing you got out of it in the end was resilience and being able to actually have
That's a great way of thinking about it.
to actually have legitimate gratitude and appreciation for that. Okay, all this person really taught me was how to survive when really rough stuff happens. I believe people are capable of it. I believe I might be capable of it, but it's hard for me to look at those difficult relationships, or it's hard for me to look back at it now and say, I'm legitimately grateful that I went through whatever negative experience that relationship subjected me to, and say that I'm thankful for the person I was able to become through surviving whatever happened. I think that's an important step, but it's not for the novice.
Here's the thing is, it's not a black or white, an either or. For me, when I look at past, if I had a really heated argument with a neighbor that I really don't like, I really can't get to the point of where, oh, I'm grateful for that and I would absolutely do that again. I don't think I can't get there. What helps me deal with that is going, that wasn't an enjoyable experience, but at least I'm grateful that I got through it, and I know in the future how I would do things a little bit differently. And yeah, I'm a little bit more resilient, but I'm not replacing that or trying to fool myself into thinking that was a great experience. And I'm grateful that I would choose to have that again, to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
Because that's when I start to go, oh, this whole grateful, and that's bad, because then I start to spiral, whereas I'm like, oh, this whole like appreciation, gratefulness stuff is there really a lot of legitimacy to this whole thing? And I start questioning more than I should. And so I'm trying to balance not ignoring my reality and the feelings I had at the time, and not try to change those in my current thinking, but go, okay, I had that experience, but what else did I have in addition to that? And that's helped me feel that this is a believable situation, and then that I'm making the best of what had happened.
Yeah, it's tough finding a balance there, where it's like, how can I, when you look back on past experiences, I think your mind has a tendency, and I guess it could be what he calls a paradigm effect, where we tend to whitewash past experiences as either that was 100% good or that was 100% bad, when really any experience is rarely 100% anything. But it does seem, when you think of that job, that vacation, that relationship, that I've seen a lot of, I posted something yesterday or the day before that COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic 5 years ago this week, which in some ways it's 5 years ago, man. In some ways that feels like it was decades ago. And in other ways it feels like that was like last year. And yeah, I also get a lot of memories that pop up on my phone, because I use whether you're using the Apple app or the Google Pictures app, it'll post and say, here's what you were doing 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. And it's, yeah, that pandemic experience was certainly it was a mixed bag. There were a lot of fun times, and there were a lot of stressful times, and there were a lot of ups and downs. And
there's a lot of change.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a very volatile time. And it's interesting to see yourself trying to categorize, was that a good time or was it a bad time? And all times are a mix of good times and bad times, because unless you're in a constant state of severe depression, where I could say, okay, you might be able to look back at a certain time of your life and it felt like it was all bad. But yeah, it's interesting, the tricks that our brains try to do on us to just make things simple, to make things easy. Like, just look back at people, places, times in our life and try to just put it in a very tiny little box that says, this relationship was good, but this one was bad. This job was bad, but this job was good. And I get why we have the impulse to do that, because life is complex, and taking the time to analyze and understand everything that we go through, it takes a lot of energy. Yeah,
Again, fighting biology also.
Right. Yeah, because your body, including your mind, is always in a, okay, but what if 5 minutes from now I'm starving to death? What if the thing I ate last was the last thing I ever get to eat? I've got to hold on to all that energy as long as I possibly can.
I'm going to streamline everything. And good, Matt. All right, done. Let's move on to the next.
Yeah. And the people that seem,
But
well, fair enough, but whether it's micro or macro, the people that seem to be the happiest and the most fulfilled and the most successful as they define success are the people that do the hard work to ask these questions and try to figure them out. And usually they're doing that with help, with a coach, a group, a therapist, whatever. It seems to me that you have to have people in your life that are willing to go through those hard questions and answers with you, because otherwise, yeah, we're just going to default to shortcuts and to the easy stuff.
you just got to believe that it's going to pay off. That delayed gratification of putting the time, effort, and asking those hard questions to figure things out. You really need to believe and understand that you will feel better by doing that, rather than the instant gratification of going, all right, good, bad, let's move on. Because there is a little bit of instant gratification with that. It's just, oh,
I understand the world.
I understand the world, that sense of completion. It's just, I don't need to, and I don't need to deal with anything that might be uncomfortable coming up. So avoiding that pain, that's another way of just getting that instant gratification. Yeah, it is a weird form of delayed gratification.
Yeah, and some of the hardest, most difficult experiences of my life have been the ones where, especially with personal relationships, like I thought that I had this person, I thought I had our relationship, I thought I had the world around me figured out. I thought I knew how everything worked. And then something happens that blows that narrative completely out of the water. And you're like, okay, what else am I wrong about? What else do I know for sure and I am 100% incorrect about? And that is, I think I take that harder than most other people do. Well, maybe that's just me wanting to think I'm special. I don't know. But it is one of the things that will definitely shake me to the core, because I'm a bit of a control freak. I want to be.
Yeah. Well, you're also really smart in a lot of different areas. And I can see that being a detriment, because then you get like this assumption that, I'm really good at doing this one. Or if you're really good at doing this one thing, or you're really smart in this one area, it's really difficult to basically let that go in another area and not bring that level of expectation of performance, of acknowledgement, awareness, and knowledge to another area that you really don't have that expertise in. And it's so hard to let that go. I've been there. So I can see why it's very difficult for a lot of us to be able to have that open mindset and go, okay, I don't have this figured out, but it'll be okay. I will figure it out. It's just going to not be on a timeline that I'm used to at this point, right?
Yeah, I think in my case, not to turn it all back around me, but let's do that anyway. Yeah. In my personal case, I had caregivers that were very chaotic. And as a result, I had to, at least I felt like I had to anticipate what their expectations were going to be from me moment to moment in order to get what I need. And so I built this pattern of, okay, Charles, you get by on your wits and about figuring out what motivates people and what people are after so that you can give it to them and then they'll meet your needs.
Oh God, man.
And then when those time periods come up in your life where you're like, okay, I thought I had this person figured out and they went and did the opposite of what they were expecting. It's okay. Now I'm not only doubting them, I'm doubting my ability to understand what it was that made them tick.
Yeah.
And now it's okay. This multi-tool that I kept in my pocket that always got me through life, turns out this tool's broken and I didn't even know it was broken. And so now what do I do? And I did one thing I want to talk about. He's got some tips on how to develop an abundance mindset. And then I also looked up some questions. What can you ask yourself on a daily, weekly basis to see if you're suffering from a scarcity mindset? And I want to share those questions. So first, how to develop an abundant mindset. Daily gratitude practice. I'm going to see if maybe there's got to be an app for that, where the How We Feel app, where you can set up friends with it. So when you say, here's what I'm feeling, it'll send out a message to somebody else who has your code. I'm going to see if there's like a buddied up gratitude app. So I'll do some research on that. If I find one, I'll share it with everybody. So here are some of these questions that you can ask yourself to see how that deprivation mindset may be affecting you. Am I holding on to toxic relationships because I fear I won't find better ones? Do I believe there's a limited number of good partners, friends, or mentors available to me? Did I avoid asking for help or support because I felt like I had to do it all myself? Am I playing small or avoiding risks because I'm afraid of failing? Do I believe that success is a zero-sum game where someone else's win means my loss? Did I hesitate to share an idea or speak up today because I thought others might take my opportunity from me? Did I view someone else's success with envy rather than inspiration? Am I focusing more on what I lack instead of what I already have? Do I believe I have control over my circumstances, or do I feel like I'm at the mercy of external forces? So I will save these and drop them in the notes for this episode so that we can share it with others and see if maybe asking these questions on a daily basis can lead to some positive change. I am copying and pasting them into my notes app right now. Okay. He gets into the importance of expecting and creating miracles, which is one of the things in this chapter that annoys me. Pleasant surprises and miracles are not the same thing.
Okay.
I hate the self-help thing that has happened to the word miracle, where it's like every good thing that happens in my life that I didn't expect to happen is all of a sudden a miracle. And being a former churchy boy and somebody who attended Bible college, a miracle has a pretty specific definition. It's when the supernatural makes a direct intervention in the physical world, and someone who was dead for multiple days comes back to life, or someone whose arm was amputated in war, it grows back and they instantly have both arms again.
Yeah.
Those things don't happen. Even the miracle of childbirth, it's really something that happens a billion times a year is a miracle. Not the way I define it. Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, miracles do not happen. So don't sit around waiting for them. But you can optimize your life so that pleasant surprises happen more often. And that should feel good enough. It doesn't have to be a miracle for, oh, that was unexpected. I had a really nice conversation with a stranger on the subway today.
Yeah.
Like that, you shouldn't have to view it as so rare that it must have required supernatural intervention for it to happen.
If anything, you're building up the tension there before you actually go out and be in the world, right?
If the creator of the universe has to personally get involved for something nice to happen to you, that is a scarcity mindset more than anything else. That flies in the face of an abundance mindset. You can't try to convince people that good things happen every day, and there are nice people that want to get to know you, and there are beautiful women who might find you attractive and want to get to know you better. That's a direct opposition to the idea that if something good happens to you, it's a miracle.
Right. To me, it's when you use that word, it almost is so unbelievable that it's almost like doing the disservice. It's actually doing the opposite of what he's advocating for here. I feel like, oh, if you're going to go out there expecting miracles, yeah, guess what? You go out there and you don't have a miracle in a couple of days, you may not be coming out anymore because you're like, I didn't have any miracles today. I had a couple pleasant surprises, but didn't have any miracles. Yeah, okay. Again, this is probably just his way of attracting attention to the book and making an impact here.
Let's see how old he is.
Trying to get people to.
I'm Googling how old the guy is.
Trying to get people to get excited about his techniques here, or not techniques, his philosophies.
Let's see. Dr. Glover was born in 1952. So, he's a smart guy and he's got a lot of good ideas. I don't want to say just because I don't like the way he says something, we should now throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
But, exactly. A worse one, I dare I say. When did Gen X start? Let's see.
Oh, better not be Gen X.
What generation? I know, that's what I'm saying. Is someone born in what? Boomer?
No.
What year was in 52? He's got to be. Yeah, that's definitely boomer. Yeah. Okay. Good. He's a boomer.
This is like the 60s, though. Right?
65 is when Gen X started.
Seems awful. Okay.
I believe 65 to 80 is what most people.
Is it always 25 years?
That's 15 years. 65 to 80 is 15 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Seems like 25 to me.
Yeah. You're 74? 74. Yeah. Not 74 years old. You were born in 1974, just to clarify that.
You're math like a 74-year-old, right?
Yeah, you were born in 1974. I was born in 1977. And I think somebody was saying that 77 wasn't Gen X, but I think someone, according to Google, the top result is somebody born in 77 is a millennial.
No.
That's what it says.
Millennials were 81.
This one says millennials were 77 to 95. So I'm like the first
Ironically,
year.
millennials, not even to the end of the century.
It's because they came of age at the millennium, not they were born at the millennia. Generation X, according to this, is 65 to 76. They also, there's a term I've heard before. I think I even joined a Facebook group for Xennials, Xenials, a micro generation, also known as the Oregon Trail generation, born between 1977 and 1985, straddling the cusp between Gen X and millennial.
Why is that the Oregon Trail generation?
I believe because it's people who are of an age where they played Oregon Trail, probably on an Apple II computer when they were a kid.
All right. It wasn't an Apple II. It was an older version of that in the library. But I remember Oregon Trail. That was great.
Yeah. So according to this, I'm a millennial, which I don't know if that's true. I feel like like musically and stuff, I identify more with Gen X, but the women I date are millennials.
Yeah.
So I think we can stop our chapter 4 at that point and move on. Our next episode that our listeners will hear will be chapter 5, which is titled Overcome Anxiety with Women. And that's already in the can, ready to be released. But the next episode you and I will be recording is our final episode for this book, chapter 10, Activating Women's Basic Biological Urges. Cringe. I hate some of the titles he picks for these things. Basic biological urges, among other issues that I will have with chapter 10, which we will discuss.
Good, man.
Thanks, Dan. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. We certainly appreciate it. Again, check out our website, mindfullymasculine.com, for news, updates, and full episodes. Thanks.